Alright guys, welcome back to the homestead. So today I want to talk about whether it makes sense to buy your hay or make your hay on a small farm like mine. So I've got 13 head right now of beef cattle. That's definitely on the small scale side of farming. You Obviously some people have 2 or 3 animals, some people have a dozen or so like I do, and then obviously some people have 50 or 100. The decision you have to make is going to be dependent on a few different factors. But I'm talking about a small homestead, somebody with probably 15 or less cattle. So I started buying my hay a few years ago, a couple years ago, I guess now. I think this will be the 3rd year that I've bought hay. So I made hay for 5 or 6 years. I did enjoy making hay, but there was a few things that ultimately ended up swaying me to get out of it. One of which was the amount of animals I have to feed. The cost of hay for the winter for me it's definitely not insignificant. It's a pretty good chunk of change, but when you break down the costs of making hay and the maintenance and the time and the upkeep of equipment and the amount of equipment that you need to make your own hay, that's what ultimately swayed me to sell my equipment and start buying hay from an outside source.
All right, so here's what I think it would take or cost me to make 60 bales with the price of everything currently, fuel at its current price, baler twine at its current price, grease, all that stuff. So you're going to have to maintain your rake, your baler, your tractor, your hay bind. And so I broke that out into a yearly cost, and I think it's probably going to cost you around somewhere around 100 or so bucks to maintain those 4 pieces of equipment. You got broken rake teeth, you got maybe a belt on the baler, or broken blade, and then the tractor maintenance number, I got that offline. That came off Google. Somebody else had already done the math, so I just pulled their number. That's a lot easier than trying to figure that out for myself. Hay bind, same thing. You might have a cutter bar bushing or something like that. Grease, I figured 3 tubes to grease everything. There's a ton of grease fittings on all that equipment. $5 a tube, so that's 15 bucks. Fuel, 3 gallons per hour, 20 hours to probably it would take to make 60 bales, and then at $5 per gallon, that's around $300 in fuel. Baler twine, 50 bucks for a couple rolls, and your time. I did include my time here. Some people might not, but there's a lot of other things I could be doing to make money, and I'm being very conservative here, saying $20 an hour. My time is probably worth a lot more than that, but figure $400. I may or may not be doing something more important. I might be out riding my side-by-side if I'm not making hay, but I just had to throw something in there because obviously none of our time is free, and I wanted to account for that. And of course, if you are making your own hay, you need your own equipment. So for a used rake, I'm figuring all used equipment here. Most people aren't going to have the money to go out and buy all brand new equipment. So used rake, like a 5-bar roll bar rake from New Holland or whatever, is going to be like 1,500 bucks. Hay bind, I'm thinking around $2,000 for something decent, like a 479 or something maybe a little bit newer. Baler, you're probably looking at least $4,000 for anything that isn't beat to crap, needs a bunch of work, stuff replaced on it like belts and all that. So you're looking at around $7,500 just to get started. Now you'll see down at the bottom there I said excludes bale spear and tractor, and that's because regardless of whether you're buying your hay or making your own hay, you still need to feed your hay, and you're going to need something to put that in your pasture with. And pretty much anybody that's homesteading or has a homestead or has cows is going to own a tractor. So I'm going to leave that out of it because you're going to have that anyway, regardless. All right, so here's what I think it'll take me to buy my hay this year, or what actually I know it'll take this because my neighbor has already told me what he's going to charge me per bale. So 60 bales at $30 a bale, I'm going to pay $1,800 to feed my cows. I'm going to throw hauling on here. Not everybody has to haul, obviously, because I'm not hauling. But if your farm isn't right next door that you're buying your hay off of, like mine is, you may have to make a few trips. So I figured $150 in fuel or whether you're paying the farmer or doing it yourself, you're going to pay for it one way or the other. Figured 4 hours, $20 an hour for your time, so $80. So it's going to cost you a little over $2,000 to buy 60 bales per year.
So in addition to the cost breakdown and the maintenance aspects and all of that, you have to ask yourself another couple questions. Do you have enough land to make your hay off of? Obviously, if you're making hay for your animals, you're going to have some set aside for pasture, you're going to have some set aside for hay ground, or you may be renting hay ground, or somebody may just be allowing you to make hay off of their land, which I was able to do for many years. But even that has its drawbacks. Even though they were paying the taxes, they weren't charging me anything, and they were happy that I was doing their hay every year and keeping their fields up, the logistics were very hard to deal with. The land that I was working was about 5 miles down the road. So say I want to go cut hay, and I've got all my equipment there. If I take my tractor, and I just take my tractor, unless I get a ride to my hay equipment, I either have to drive the tractor back at the end of the night at almost dark, or I have to get a ride back to leave my tractor there at the field. Obviously, towing 5 pieces of equipment down the road is also a logistical issue. People don't like to slow down for hay equipment, so you got people zipping past you or getting upset that you're kind of hogging the road. Is what it is, but that's just something to think about. If your hay ground isn't right where your farm is, it can become kind of a pain. I dealt with it for many years. It wasn't a huge deal, but it is something to think about. The other thing to consider with that is now you need a trailer to get your hay home, whether it's square bales or round bales. You either need to haul it back in a wagon or put it on some sort of flatbed or a car trailer or whatever to get it back to your farm. If you're making any amount of bales, that's a lot of trips back and forth that you got to deal with. In addition to that, if you do break down and you're not right at your house, which happened to me many times, you don't have the tools there usually to work on it, so you got to go back to your house, grab whatever tools you may need, come back, air compressor, sometimes a welder if you really can't get your equipment off the field without making a weld or something, or you got to call somebody. So all of that comes into play when you're not doing hay right at your own homestead. Now there is a third option, and that is to have somebody come in and hay your own fields, and you buy that hay at a reduced rate, generally around half the price of what it would cost to go out and buy it from them had they done all the work on their own land. There again, you have to have hay ground set aside. You have to have somebody come in. You have to count on them to do it when the hay's ready, so that it's not all seeded out, dried out, whatever. And if it ends up getting rained on their watch, you're still going to have to pay them for that hay. I would assume. I don't know how that actually works, but I'm assuming if they drop it on the ground, it all gets rained on the next day before they have time to bale it, you're still going to be responsible for half the cost of that hay. Whereas if you're going out to buy it, obviously you're not going to buy rained on hay from somebody. You're going to buy whatever they've got that's nice, dry, quality hay. Obviously the same goes for making your own hay. If you're making your own hay and it gets rained on, well, that's kind of tough luck. Whereas you can go buy whatever quality or type of hay you want, generally speaking, on a decent hay year. You're going to be able to find some hay from somebody else that wasn't rained on, and you can actually pick your hay rather than going out mowing it, having it get rained on. You're kind of stuck with that. You have to do something with it. You either have to feed it or sell it for mulch or whatever it is. One other thing I forgot to mention in that cost breakdown was if you want to feed like haylage, baleage, wet hay, whatever you want to call it, wrapped bales, that's another piece of equipment you have to own and maintain if you're making your own hay. But if you're going and buying it from your neighbor or the guy down the road, then you don't have to worry about it. You can just go and buy it, and obviously you're going to pay a premium for that kind of stuff just because it's an extra step for the farmer, but just something else to consider. So I guess the biggest thing for me was the time commitment. You're really stuck doing it every nice day in the summer if you're doing any amount of hay. You know, it starts around Memorial Day. Obviously doing 4th of July, you're doing hay almost always because it's usually a really nice weekend and you just get stuck doing it. Labor Day is usually getting towards the end of the season, depending on how late you're going and what you're doing, whether you're doing wet or dry hay. But yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a huge time commitment, and the maintenance and upkeep of 4 or 5 pieces of equipment, I just couldn't justify it with my current setup, with my current amount of animals. So it's all relative. It really depends on how many animals you have, how much time you have to spend, and how much do you enjoy it. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like videos like this, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment below. We really appreciate the interaction with you guys, and that's why we do it. So thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time.